Hello and welcome all to today's webinar and the inaugural event of the Coalition for Greener Mobility. I'm Stephen Cryne, President and CEO of the Canadian Employee Relocation Council. Also joining us this morning, well, this morning for me, could be the evening for you in Europe and the UK, Jesse Van Sath, Secretary General with FIDI Global Alliance, Marianne Passi, the CEO of CHPA, Chuck White, President, International Association of Movers, Tad Zurlinden, CEO of EuRA, and Lynn Shotwell of Worldwide ERC. We're thrilled to have you with us this morning as we share some of the progress from the Coalition's work to date. We have about 250 people from across Europe, the UK, and the US and Canada on the call today. The Coalition for Greener Mobility was established in June of 2022. Gosh, 1992, we would have completed our work. The founding the founding members are committed to improving the environmental, social, and governance ESG practices in all areas of global mobility. Our immediate focus will be on environmental sustainability. Perhaps this is where we, as organizations representative of the global mobility community, can have the greatest impact. Just to begin, I'd like to just share with you some of the objectives that the Coalition has currently established. One is to promote a common understanding of good practices and actions to improve sustainable outcomes across our industry. Two, to facilitate learning, collaboration, and improved ESG practices in the management of global mobility. Three, provide the mobility community with the tools to help improve transparency on environmental sustainability. And finally, to facilitate meaningful measurements that track and report on environmental sustainability progress. These objectives will, of course, be moderated and modified rather, depending upon the learning and the progress that we make. During today's webinar, we'll provide an update on our progress to date, our next steps, and how your organizations can get involved in our work and support the Coalition. So Tad, may I begin with you? Could you take a few minutes to share how the Coalition came into being and some of the progress that we've made to date?
Yes, thank you, Steve. And good afternoon, everybody here from the UK. It's 4 p.m, so it's the afternoon. As organizations, we've all known of each other or known each other for many, many years. And I suppose for me, one of the things I really wanted to see was us perhaps doing stuff together. And over the years, we have done stuff in twos and threes. There was the We Can conference that was WRC, ourselves, and CERC. And we've also done joint research with CERC in the past, and worked a little bit with IAM on some training, and have developed a very good relationship with FIDI as EuRA. But this was a golden opportunity to get all the associations together, and I couldn't be more delighted that we're all sitting here and we're all trying to work towards something for the whole global mobility industry in the form of this greener coalition. So we came together with a little document, an agreement in July, which we all signed. And then we decided that we needed to set about finding someone to do some external research on our behalves. And we looked at various organizations. And in the end, with the purpose of identifying key priorities on the sustainability roadmap, we selected Deloitte to carry out a project on our behalves. They came to us and they said that they proposed to survey all our members, do some in-depth interviews, then do a bit of market research, and conclude with a full day's lab session at the WRC conference in Las Vegas. So the membership interviews, membership surveys proved to be a little bit of a sticking point, and there was a great deal of discussion about how we were going to send these surveys out to our members, because we really didn't want to annoy them, because in at least one case, we have a member common to 5 out of the 6 associations. In the end, we decided there was nothing we could do about it. So we sent the survey to all our members, all of us, and we apologize if you received many, many copies of the same thing. But it was the only way that we could actually set this thing in motion. We then, between us, selected approximately 24 individuals from around the world to do in-depth interviews with Deloitte from all the various disciplines, DSP, corporate housing, moving, RMCs, and corporate clients, to get information on their views as to the whole sustainability situation. Deloitte then did a bit more market research, and then this culminated, as I said earlier, with a full day lab session, to which we, I think, put 10 or 12 representatives from the various different fields within the mobility industry. And they sat in Las Vegas for a day and effectively helped to prepare the roadmap, which was eventually, which was delivered in December, but we as the associations received a preview slightly before that. And that's how we've got to where we are today. Back to you, Steve.
Tad, where were we when we had that inaugural meeting? Just how did that come about?
Oh, which are you talking about? The one earlier last year?
Yes.
Oh, well, we had, well, Jesse and Lynn and you and I had gone off to have lunch somewhere and talk about it in Seville. So we were in Seville for that. And it was during that meeting that we absolutely had to have Chuck and Marianne as well to cover the full mobility industry.
Right. And I guess it just shows the partnerships and the power of partnerships, how we can come together. That's the kind of the point I wanted to get to. I don't even think we had a glass of wine at lunch when we were talking about that. But I do know
absolutely not. We were all working, me in particular.
Yes, but I do know that, and I just want, I want to share that there's a great deal of passion around the purpose that we're trying to achieve, and I just wanted to convey that in our discussion this morning. So thanks for that, Tad. And Jesse, you were instrumental in bringing us together, and thank you. You really saw some of the challenges around the sustainability issues. So can you just take us through some of the pain points in global mobility that you've identified through your work to this point?
Thank you, Stephen. There are many pain points, as you can imagine. But before talking about these and about our roadmap, which everybody is waiting for, of course, I think we first need to acknowledge that many things have already been done by the 6 associations, particularly on education. All of the 6 associations in this coalition have already created content. We've created guidelines, we've provided education, webinars, seminars on the subject of ESG, and more particularly on the environmental aspect of it. And we will, of course, continue to do so. But we also have to acknowledge that lack of data and standards is a problem all stakeholders in our industry, from the biggest to the smallest players, are facing. After all, though the focus is very often on the big relocation companies and their corporate clients, the majority of our members are small businesses, relatively small businesses, and they are under constant pressure from the corporates, from the RMCs, from legislation, from their staff to comply with whatever rules they have. And now specifically focusing on ESG. And in fact, this lack of knowledge, the lack of common definitions, standards, a consistent approach, is a worldwide, it's a global problem, as this is all fairly new and uncharted territory for many. But a scattered approach on this issue is inefficient, and it's going to be counterproductive. If each individual company goes out and tries to find their own solution, that will no doubt lead to duplication, to conflicts. It will wasted investments, efforts will be wasted as well. There will be miscommunication, there will be incorrect benchmarks, etc. In short, if we have that scattered approach, it will cost a lot of money for the supply chain and global mobility to comply with all these different measurements that are about right now. Self-detached standards, whatever you have, which is a cost that somehow must be recovered from the customers. Because let's face it, small businesses in the broad supply chain and global mobility are faced with various and very different reporting of carbon output as imposed by the larger corporation. If we don't work together and create those common definitions, then it's likely that these small businesses will simply try to tick the box and get it out of their way without really working towards a lower carbon footprint. And on top of that, we have our legislation coming our way. In EU particularly, but in the US, they're working on it as well and all around the world. And that legislation will be probably very tough and very strict, and will not tolerate a scattered approach on this sustainability problem in global mobility. We have a rather complex supply chain in global mobility, and it's therefore vital that we kind of mitigate the impact on the environment among all actors, right? Jointly working together to lower emissions. It is not enough for any individual company to offset its impact on the environment. That's a temporary measure you can do, but it's certainly not enough. Carbon insetting, which is reducing carbon emissions within a company and its supply chain, is a far more efficient way of reducing the carbon footprint, making it a kind of carbon positive effort. Reducing its own emissions and working with your suppliers to reduce their emissions. After all, sustainability is a shared responsibility of corporate accounts and their supply chain, and environmental sustainability should not be seen as an individual competitive advantage. That's why I think this coalition is working towards a common approach and a roadmap for global mobility. And I think Lynn is going to speak to that subject.
Great. Thanks, Jesse. So, I think, Tad, you did a nice job of talking about the origins of our coalition. And I'd like to take just a minute to kind of address where we are at Worldwide ERC, because for me, the critical need to address this issue came together from conversations I had at our Global Workforce Symposium in 2021. And at that time, I heard from both corporate leaders who were issuing RFPs, as well as service provider leaders who have to respond to the RFPs, that there are multiple efforts going on across our industry to try to reduce our collective carbon footprint, but that nobody was speaking the same language. We weren't asking common questions, we weren't responding in the same way. And so there was a need for the industry to kind of develop some standards and common ways to start talking about everything. And so as you heard, at the same time we were embarking upon this journey, so were my colleagues at the other associations. And I think the worst thing we could have done is to have developed the FIDI roadmap, the Worldwide ERC roadmap, the IAM roadmap, et cetera, so that we were further confusing everybody in our industry. So what we did at ERC is I pulled together an advisory council to help us figure this out. And as Jesse just mentioned, it was fortuitous that this advisory council came together right before the Securities and Exchange Commission issued their proposed rule last spring. Now, if you're not familiar with the SEC rule, what it would do is it would require all publicly traded companies to report on not just their own carbon emissions, but the carbon emissions within their supply chain. So, U.S. business has raised a lot of concerns over the proposed rule, but we know that it's coming. And so if we take a look at what the EU is proposing, what the U.S. is proposing, many other countries around the world are proposing, what we've got to do is, I think, kind of figure out how to get ahead of that. So as we had our laboratories, we asked our consultants to put together what are some actions that we could take together in order to start addressing this as a community. And as you can see here, they defined both short, medium, and long-term actions. Within the short term, I think there was, let me just focus on those. So it's, how do we define green mobility? And I think that's a question that we can answer better, partly after we get the regulations from the SEC and the EU, because we're going to start looking at how are the governments defining it. So frankly, then how do we define it based upon what they're asking us to do? The same thing with measuring a carbon footprint. There are many calculators that are out there. I think one of our goals is to start sorting through those, providing education so that if you want to calculate your footprint, what measures are out there. We can help identify the ones that might be most suited to your world. But again, we aren't going to develop a new one until we kind of get some more guidance from the governments. But the area where we really can focus is on education. As Tad and Jesse have pointed out, we have all done education sessions at our conferences. We have a variety of white papers on our websites. We have certification programs. We have other tools that you can use. But I think for anybody who's looking at this, sometimes it's a little bit hard to find all of this. So we will be working together to pull all of our collective educational materials together into one location so that it's easy for all of you to find. But you know what, with what we have, it's not enough. We need all of your help. There was a question that came through the chat about, are we going to include real estate professionals in this? Absolutely. What we want is to be a place where everyone in the industry can come together and share what we've already developed. I know many of the RMCs have developed really excellent white papers on sustainability. Other service providers have as well. So our goal with the education is to be a repository so that we can organize and make available these educational materials to anyone within the community who's interested in learning more about it. Once we kind of create this, then we will move to some of these other efforts in terms of defining green mobility, measuring carbon footprints. And we're going to be, again, going out looking to find the best tools to bring to you in the short term, and then over the longer term, we can start to develop, some. We can draw upon experts within the community to really develop tools that are unique to our industry. So, with that, Marianne, I'll pass it over to you to talk about, some of the next steps we're going to take.
Thanks, Lynn. So the next step, really, you see the 3 bullets on screen. We want to establish work groups for each of these priorities or each of these items to identify how to best move forward. And they include a lot of what's already been discussed: standardization, measurement, terminology, and definitions. In terms of the coalition, we ourselves are formalizing our aspirations into actions. So what that means is we're finalizing our charter, giving the group a formal structure, allowing us to achieve the next item on screen and what Lynn just mentioned and the question being asked, expanding beyond the original 6 associations and our representative industries. So our goal is to expand our partnerships with other stakeholders, including individuals and corporations, companies that are already doing great work to positively impact environmental sustainability. From our research that you just saw highlights of and the conversations to date, what needs to happen next is clear. Simple, common approaches that we develop together, highlighting best practices in each sector and in our work with each other, and offering curated resources, just as the education that Lynn was just speaking about moments ago, for our respective members to use. So again, the 3 areas that were suggested to focus these working groups around were measurement, certifications, ratings, and reporting, setting some type of industry-specific targets, improvements, and standards. So we need your help to develop these working groups. To be clear, they will be hands-on working groups. We need leaders who are already accomplishing great things or wish to do so and get actively involved in making things happen. These groups require expertise and specialists to help craft our next steps forward together. We are not the expert as the association leads. We are not the experts in this area. We're merely the catalyst to bring your great thinking together, whatever association or company or industry sector that you may operate in. So these working groups are not yet created, but that will happen next with your help. So we're going to be coordinating our call for expertise to each of our association's members to join these groups. These working groups may initially begin and be compromised by representatives across industry sectors, and they may, if needed, be industry specific in the future to identify the next best steps that work best for a particular sector. So that is what we're going to figure out together. Simply by being in this meeting, everyone in this meeting will be invited to get involved in your area of expertise, specialty, or interest. So please look for this information soon and respond to our call for help to help impact and improve environmental sustainability. So I think Chuck is going to speak next.
Sure, if you could advance it. Thank you very much. So I think I've become the bad guy of the group. We've always, when speaking to other groups, allowed me to talk about resources. Each of the 6 associations have made substantial contributions to launch this initiative. And we've gotten agreement from our boards of directors to push this initiative forward in a way that will bring some standardization across the mobility industry. But there's no way that we can do this alone. As Marianne talked about, we are hoping to bring other organizations and other groups that are involved in mobility into our coalition at both the coalition level and within working groups. But the work to be done is significant. And we are not going to be able to do this alone with the resources that we have available to us. This is a significant undertaking. I will tell you that I probably am the least educated among this group, and the least along the timeline for any type of implementation for my association on the sustainability front. And it's been an incredible learning tool to join with these 5 other leaders and learn and understand what I didn't know about the sustainability efforts that are going on worldwide. But it takes resources to be able to take this initiative forward. So I think there'll be many levels of entry as we move forward, but we probably will be asking groups to contribute to this effort. It is a monumental effort to bring standardization and understanding across all aspects of mobility. So don't be surprised that as you move forward, we will reach out to you and ask you for contributions in this effort, because it will be necessary to achieve the goals that we're starting to set for ourselves. We really hope to be transparent. This is really our first step in this goal. We want you as members of the mobility community to understand what we've done thus far and what we hope to do in the future. So transparency is one of the key terms that we're going to have here. You need to understand the direction that we're going. You need to understand where the investments that we've made already have gone and where the investments will go in the future. So we're really looking to cooperate with other groups, bring them under the umbrella, and have some very proactive cooperation between all of the different sectors in mobility. We need your buy-in. This is a very stratified industry. Mobility has so many pieces associated with it, and we can't be successful if you're not willing to step in, put your toe in the water, and participate in our group. It's been just the 6 of us thus far who have led this charge, but there is no way we can hope to be fully successful in the implementation and follow the timeline that's been set for us if we don't have buy-in from all of the mobility stakeholders and have the participation. We can't do it alone. The other thing we're going to be asking, and has been stated by a number of the leaders, is there are many that have started down this continuum. And there's all kinds of data out there. There's all kinds of information. There's all kinds of educational tools. And what we are hoping to do is to gather all of that information and data, or as much as we possibly can, put it in a single repository, a website that we're building right now, and then to have a single location where those involved in mobility can go to find out information, to gather the data, to understand what is necessary to continue to move down this continuum so that we meet some common goals. So I'm incredibly excited to be a part of this group, to join this group, to work with these amazing leaders, and hopefully join with all of you to be able to drive this effort forward. Stephen, back to you.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of passion, as you can see, and you heard from each of the leaders of the associations that make up the coalition. You know, some things that resonated with me when we were in Las Vegas, from the working groups that we had established, the need that this is a shared responsibility. It's the right thing for us to do collectively, and there has to be proactive cooperation. There were a number of speakers that were quite passionate about we should not make this a competitive advantage within the industry, that we have to somehow break that down. And I think that that's where we talk about the need for transparency and the proactive cooperation. A number of associations and sectors of the community, of the global mobility community, are further along the spectrum. Obviously, the household goods moving groups have taken significant steps to reduce their carbon footprints, along with the CHPA. But there are many other opportunities. There was a question in the chat from a realtor that said, "Hey, are you going to include realtors in the work of the coalition?" And yeah, we definitely are. We probably need to review more aspects of the small businesses that make up the whole supply chain of global mobility. And as Jesse said, you know, many of them are smaller organizations, and we need to make sure that we bring them into the process. So this is a significant challenge. You've heard each of us say that we simply can't do it alone, and we need your support. That support will include financial resources and the assistance of subject matter experts. As Marianne quite rightly said, we're the catalyst that will make this work. If you would like to get involved, you can connect with any one of us at the email addresses that Ridwan will have on the screen in one. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there we go. That we've got on the screen in front of you. If you'd like more information, for example, on what CHPA may have done in this area, or you can write to us at info@greenermobility.org. We're in the process of setting up our website. Ridwan, if you could just, this will be launching in the next couple of weeks. And this will be the repository that Jesse spoke to. It will be a library of curated articles, studies, and best practices that will be available to all members of our association. And if you'd like to contribute content, you can email us. Sorry to flip back and forth between the slides, but you can email that information to us at info@greenermobility.org as we start to populate the website. So I'll open it up to over 225 people on the call. So really appreciate the participation that we've received from the community. It shows us that there's great interest and interest in the work that we're doing. So I encourage you to share any Q&As, any questions. Is there a plan yet? Or have you considered how you will get member companies suppliers and corporates to agree to these measures? That's a tough question, but I think that, you know, sessions such as these and the education that we're doing will encourage us to do that. Lynn, did you want to jump in on? I saw, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Look, I think as I talk to people within our community, there's a great sense that we're all in this together as, you know, as just citizens of this world, and we have to figure it out. So I think pressure is coming on this from a couple of different places. One is from the governments. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the SEC will be imposing a rule on publicly traded companies. But, you know, and I know that within our kind of world, most organizations are small and medium-sized enterprises that are not publicly traded. But if you're in if you are in the supply chain or your clients are publicly traded, this is going to come down on you. And I think, you know, Jesse, maybe you can address what's happening in the EU, but it's the same pressure. So the governments are going to impose this whether we want to or not. We also know that there's pressure coming from outside investors, from shareholders and stakeholders. So again, the companies that will be hiring mobility services, they have pressure from, you know, their clients and customers to do the right thing. And also from within their employees. I think, you know, we've entered this world where there's a great focus on, you know, all ESG issues, not just kind of environmental sustainability, which is what we've chosen to focus on right now, but diversity, equity, and inclusion, good governance, all of that. So we have to kind of come along and figure out how we work together as a community to create standards and get buy-in. So, you know, ultimately, will there be some organizations that maybe are not interested in what we come up with? Perhaps. But we will, as we develop the standards, the goal is to ensure that we have input from every part of our industry, from every part of the supply chain, from corporate HR and procurement professionals, so that when we develop something, we've gotten input from all of the different parts of our industry. So hopefully what we develop, you know, meets everybody's needs. It'll never be perfect, but the goal is to be as transparent and collective as possible.
And that's, you know, that's the whole inclusion aspect of this as well, is that we're including as much of our community, our global mobility community, into this process. Chuck, you wanted to weigh in on this one as well.
I did, because as regulation comes forward, as Lynn has talked about, and I think Jesse will talk about in the EU, what is going to be called for is these publicly traded companies or companies over particular thresholds. They're going to not only have to report on themselves, but their supply chain all the way down. And so what I've talked to many of my members, the smaller ones say to me, well, you know, how is this going to affect me? Well, if you are involved in the supply chain for an entity that is moving, a corporation moving employees, you are going to probably have to provide information on your footprint and what you are doing to improve your sustainability initiatives up the supply chain, so that your corporate entity that you're working with, your RMC that you're working with, can provide that data. If you're not able to establish parameters and establish a plan, which we are trying to help others do, then you're probably not going to be included in that supply chain any longer. So this works from the top down, but also the bottom up. So everyone involved in this arena needs to be interested in this, get engaged in this, get involved, and be aware.
Right.
Back over to Jesse.
Jesse.
Yeah, spot on, Chuck. Thanks for mentioning that. And apart from the pressure we're getting from legislation, from your staff, from local legislation as well, that could also be your own motivation to do something about it. It makes sense that we do something about the issue that we have at hand right now. That would be the strongest motivator if you convince yourself that something needs to happen. I did see another question, Stephen, if you don't mind, I'll answer that part of that at least. And that's asking if we are working on a kind of quality sustainability standard. kind of hallmark certificate. Yes, that would actually be the goal ultimately. I think we're not there yet because we first have to make sure that we have common definitions, that we have common measurement. And once we have established that, and we get the cooperation from the rest of the supply chain, from the corporates, from the RMCs, which is a big task, I do agree. Once we have all that, then we can start working towards a quality sustainability standard. And absolutely that should be the goal, because that would make sense. Then we all work from the same benchmark, from the same basis, and it makes sense. Because I've seen beautiful self-declared standards popping up left, right, and center. People saying we're carbon neutral. If you then zoom into it and say, well, who says so? They say that themselves that they are carbon neutral. That is fantastic, and I hope that they really do that effort, but it doesn't mean anything. So we need to work on this together, but we first have to walk before we can start running.
Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, as I said at the outset, we've got objectives that we've set, and those objectives may shift as we learn more. The things that we've put out are not carved in stone. I maybe make that clear. The coalition is not closed. We're open. We're figuring out how we will be more inclusive. And I see there's lots of stuff in the chat here about, you know, how excited people are that we're coming together and working on this. The common thread I'm seeing through this is it's the right thing to do. And future generations expect leaders to be working on subjects, topics, challenges like sustainability, DE&I, and they want to belong to communities and industries that have that goal and objective in mind. Marianne.
Hi, Steve. Thank you. And as Lynn mentioned, as we all talked about, we already have educational resources out there. I mean, the way we got involved as well were our members. I saw in the chat or in the Q&A a comment with a smaller corporate housing company saying, small corporate housing company, limited resources. Our members are all asking for this because they are being asked by their clients, by their corporate clients, by their RMCs to be part of or to validate their sustainability efforts, as Chuck and Jesse so eloquently stated. And so in response to that, to best serve them, in order to help them understand, how do they get started? What are the small steps that they can begin to take? What are they already doing that they're not even aware that they're doing, that they could report as part of RFPs and as part of the supply chain? You know, how do we celebrate these small successes and give them the next steps that they can continue to improve and progress along their own sustainability journeys? So that's why coming together is so critically important. We all have these educational resources that exist. Compiling them in one place allows anyone to come in at whatever stage they may be at and either begin or continue to progress. And some of the people that are on this call that have been part of the resources pulled together to date, they are, as Chuck was saying, so far down and so well informed on what needs to happen and the right way to approach things. And they're allowing us to share their expertise with the larger group. So again, please get involved. Please share your information with us. As has been said, we can't do it without you, but this is why we're pulling ourselves together, trying to speak with one voice, trying to curate things. You know, the questions are being asked about what resources, and that's our goal, to curate those types of resources for all of you. So we've done the legwork, or someone has done the legwork, and we're sharing that with you to kind of shortcut your introduction or your progression through the sustainability journey.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just add, Steve, you know, there's a question in the chat that says, do we think that, you know, some will seek competitive advantage in this, you know, or should we cooperate? And I think, you know, when I first launched on this journey, I had the CEO of one of the RMCs tell me, she said, you know, yes, we could use this for competitive advantage, but the right thing to do is to work together. And so I was really pleased when at our conference last fall, we had roundtables of competitors sitting together to try to figure it out. We had the biggest RMCs in the room, and we're trying to share information. And I think, you know, the value of trade associations, which we all are, is that we are the place where competitors can put aside their differences to solve those problems that, frankly, you can't solve on your own. So will there be some that might try to use it that way? Maybe. but I think the majority of us really want to work together. And so we really encourage all of you who have an interest in this, especially if you have some expertise. You know, if you've done your own research, you're further down this path than maybe a lot of other people. We want to draw on what you know, because we don't have all this expertise.
And we can only learn and make headway together.
Yep.
This is such a huge challenge. Tad, you wanted to weigh in.
I put my hand up because I was being polite. I think one of the things is really important is that as a group of associations, we're also not only are we working on this as the Greener Coalition, but we're going to carry this forward at our various events this year, conferences, starting with CHPA in a couple of weeks, and then moving on to FIDI next month, and then EuRA the month after. And we will be discussing sustainability and looking for people to approach us with ideas and things that we can bring into this. So we've started a movement that's going to definitely keep going over the next few years in order to come up with something. And I noticed people have put questions like, is there a timeline for implementation? The fact is that we will hopefully come up with different things over a period of time, but small things, one thing at a time, which in the end will add up to something much larger. I think it's going to take us a while to get this whole thing completely on track, but we're going to actually manage to get it pretty much on the way to being on track pretty quickly.
Thanks, Ted. Chuck, did you have?
Thanks. Yeah, I also wanted to weigh in on this concept of competitive advantage. I think one of the benefits that we as a coalition have is we come from the nonprofit world. We're trying to push forward initiatives to make our memberships, our industry, and the world better. So we're hoping that people will engage that want to put the concept of competitive advantage to the side and do what is best for this world that we live in. I know it's a bit cliche-ish, but again, if I can get 5 more relocations because of my sustainability program, is that better than what we can possibly do as an industry? I think this is also a side piece, is the image building for the mobility industry that we stand to gain here. We're putting competitive advantage hopefully to the side, and we're looking for something that is about the greater good. And whether the other thing that always concerns me is to be regulated into requirements. Why not put these requirements that could be accepted by governments and say these people have already gone forward and given us the footprints, the timelines to be able to be effective, and rather than having those types of things mandated to us by governments that probably really don't understand our business. So I think we have an incredible opportunity here to be able to push forward this initiative without having it pushed down on us.
So there's a number of different points that are very supportive of the questions that have been asked and the comments that have been asked this afternoon. What I can say is that, as we're in closing, is that we're going to continue to cooperate as associations. We will be building out the website. We'll be communicating that to you. There'll be a recording of today's event made available to all of the participants as well. And I hope that people will join us and find ways in which they can support us either financially or with subject matter experts as we launch this initiative. It's going to take time. We'll stumble at times, maybe we will make mistakes. We'll be prepared for that. But at the end of the day, as many of you have said on the call this afternoon, it's the right thing to do, and it's a shared responsibility. Whether we're in Europe, whether we're in, and actually this evening for us here in North America, at 11:59, we'll be doing this same broadcast with global mobility professionals in Asia Pacific, because this is a global initiative, and we want to make sure that it is inclusive. So with that, I will say goodbye on behalf of all of us here this afternoon. It's been a very good exchange of information and ideas, and I hope that you'll join us by submitting content and providing us with your very best ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.